Hi everyone, this is Adrian,
And I'm Cherie.
and for this episode of the Scent Library, we are going to talk about fragrances inspired by Tom Ford. These fragrances came from the house of Maison Alhambra. Yes, and tell us more about Maison
So,
Alhambra.
Maison Alhambra is a subsidiary of Lattafa, a Middle Eastern UAE company that makes clones, but also makes quite a few original Middle Eastern style scents and stuff. And when I say quite a few, I mean a lot. Yes, these are clones, but they are also, they're not the only thing that this house makes. Maison Alhambra seems to be an offshoot of the Lattafa line, which specializes almost entirely in clones. And the ones that we're going to talk about today are mostly clones of, or they are clones of Tom Ford scents. So let's get into it.
Okay.
All right. So the first one we're going to talk about is by the Zafiro line of Maison Alhambra. I don't really know what the Zafiro line means other than at least the couple that I was able to find, the bottles are blue. That doesn't mean that they're blue fragrances though. I think it's kind of a higher end type of a scent or something. Anyway, this one is called Crafted Oud. And this one is a little bit interesting in that it's a clone of a Tom Ford. This is a clone. Crafted Oud is a clone of Carved Oud by Tamim, which is a niche line from the Middle East. And Crafted Oud, Carved Oud, it gets a little confusing. Carved Oud was a clone or inspired by Tom Ford's oud wood, and their intent was actually to take oud wood how it originally was and kind of pay homage to that and strengthen some of the notes and some of the downfalls of that, which basically is that after a couple hours or so it seems to fade away and you can't really smell it, which doesn't seem to be a good purpose for something that you pay nearly $300 for 50 mils of. So, getting into this one, this was a rather new release. Depending on where you get it, you can get it pretty inexpensively. Certainly, you should be able to get it for under about $45, and often as inexpensively as under $30. This has top notes of cardamom, nagarmatha, cypress, pink pepper, oud, iris, cedar, patchouli, vanilla, and musk. And interestingly, those are pretty much all in common with Tamim's Carved Oud. I didn't really do a comparison with oud wood because there's a couple changes in that over the years that have made it a little bit harder to compare with the original one. But serve it to say that all of the notes that really stand out are the same. What do you think of this one as far as its ability to last longer than the oud wood?
It lasts a little longer than oud wood, but not that long. So you need to still respray every so often.
Yeah. So a lot of people say this one projects for about 2 to 3 hours, which I would say maybe it's about kind of on the same lines as the Tom Ford. I don't have the Carved Oud to really say for that one, but it projects for about 2 to 3 hours and it becomes a skin scent for about 7 to 8 hours, but it lasts a long time on clothing. So like if you sprayed it on a scarf or something like that that you were going to wear, it might still be smelling a few days later. But suffice it to say, almost everybody that tried this one likes it a lot, thinks that it is very similar to either Carved Oud or to oud wood. I have oud wood, and it's one of my Tom Fords that I have that I would say is my least favorite, not because it doesn't smell good, but just because it just doesn't last. And having something that you have to reapply every 2 to 3 hours, I'm fine with something that's not the original. If it smells good, it smells like it, then I can get something like this and spray away. So that's what I think one of the utilities is of something like this, is if there's something that the original costs a fortune and it doesn't last very long, if you can find a really good suitable clone, use that and spray it as much as you want to.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, let's move on to another one that is a clone of a real favorite of mine, Tom Ford's Ebony Fume. This one, Ebony Fume, real direct knockoff there, is a clone of Ebony Fume. Now, is it an exact note-by-note clone? Well, from the note breakdowns that I find, yeah, it's the same note breakdown. Incense, Palo Santo, black pepper, violet leaf, leather, labdanum, cade oil, papyrus, rose, resin, ebony, and guaiac wood. So same thing in both. Now, when I smell this one compared to the Tom Ford one, I notice a little bit of a difference in the way that it comes off at first. I would say probably the Tom Ford is a little bit more incensey and peppery at first. This one has a little bit more of a sharp opening at first. Maybe the violet leaf comes across a bit more. Quite honestly though, 20 minutes later, they smell the same to me. Ebony Fume, I always tell people, be careful when you're wearing that one, because if you're in closed spaces or someplace where there's not enough room for people to get away from you, if they don't like it and they're near you, this is a strong fragrance. And this is exactly the same as the Tom Ford version in that it's strong. It can be a little bit divisive. I like it, but I think it's one that's more for people that have a little bit of a refined perfume, sort of a sense of what things they like, and that go a little bit more in the daring sort of an end. But it's a really good cold weather type of a scent. I wouldn't wear this one in high heat because it just really projects and it's awfully strong. So yeah, the notes in this one are pretty much exactly the same. And Tom Ford Ebony Fume, if you can find it, because it's really kind of hard to find these days, it's going to be about $300 for 50 mils, whereas this is probably about
$30.
$30 for 80 mils.
Yeah.
So again, like the other one, if you've smelled Ebony Fume and you like that, you know, I wouldn't use the thing of where you have to reapply this one a whole lot, because you don't. But you know, if you don't want to pitch out $300 for 50 mils of it and stuff, this is a knockout, like almost dead ringer for the original.
Yeah.
And you know, you get your money's worth out of this one and more. Okay, now let's go on to another really big favorite Tom Ford one. This one, Porto Neroli. It's a pretty obvious knockoff of Neroli Portofino. It's hard to say that they were being subtle in their cloning of these. The bottles look like Tom Ford, just larger. The colors are exactly the same, and the names are just a little twist off of the originals. So Tom Ford Neroli Portofino, Maison Alhambra, Porto Neroli. Are the notes pretty much the same? Yeah, in the original, in the Tom Ford, there's only basically Angelica and Ambrette are the only things missing from the Maison Alhambra, and they substitute in two other notes, sea salt and wormwood, in this one, in the Porto Neroli, for the Angelica and Ambrette. So you get a little bit more of a fluffy, sort of flowery touch with the Tom Ford, whereas you get a sort of a sea salt and driftwoody type of a woody smell in the clone. This has notes of neroli, lemon, mandarin, jasmine, bitter orange, orange blossom, lavender, sea salt, herbal notes, wormwood, and amber. And this is a really nice, I would say, warmer weather fragrance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this one is great for wearing in the spring, summer, early fall. It's probably not so much a winter fragrance because it doesn't project a whole lot in colder weather, but in summer weather, it projects really nicely. And how do you think it lasts?
It lasts a while.
Yeah. It probably projects for about 4 hours, and I think it's a skin scent for 8 or more. And I'm talking this one, not the original Tom Ford.
Yeah.
The Tom Ford kind of dies off sooner, I think. Okay, let's jump into another Tom Ford favorite, a clone of a Tom Ford favorite. This one is called Bright Peach. Guess which Tom Ford this one is a copy of?
Better Peach.
That's right. Not that you'd have known that from the name or the bottle, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so are the notes the same in this one as in the Tom Ford? Well, not quite. Some of the more important notes are definitely the same, the ones that you probably notice the most. Peach, blood orange, heliotrope, cognac, patchouli. Those are the notes that are the same between the two. The bright peach has definitely, like it says, a brighter peach opening than the Tom Ford bitter peach. I don't know when I don't own bitter peach, but I have a friend who has it and I've sampled it. And I don't know that I would actually call the Tom Ford peach a really bitter peach. It's just not a sweet peach. So there you go on that. This one definitely has a bright, fresh peach note, like you're cutting a fresh peach and tearing it open and stuff. The Tom Ford is a more lavish collection of notes and stuff, but I don't know that I really can appreciate all of those notes when I'm smelling it, even in the dry down. It seems to be like they're there, but I can't really pick them out. So there you go. The notes that seem to be the ones everybody notices are the same, but it's a little bit less complex, but it's a very pleasing scent, not overly sweet or candied. It smells very natural and definitely a warm weather fragrance, I think.
Yeah.
So, did you like wearing this one?
Yes, I did. I did. And what I like about it is the blood orange.
Yeah.
Note.
Yeah.
Complements well with the peach.
It really does. Yeah, it has a nice kind of a supporting sort of a feel for the peach so that the peach isn't all alone there. I think peach all on its own is kind of a weak note in fragrance and probably why it's not been used a lot up until just very recently. But yeah, the blood orange really supports it nicely.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Try to guess what this one's a clone of. If you're a Tom Ford fan, then you know of the some of the sexy name fragrances that have come out. This is definitely one that goes there. The Lost Cherie by Tom Ford came out a few years ago. It's one of their really expensive ones, and honestly, I don't like it that much. And that's coming from a person who loves cherry scents.
Oh. Okay.
So my thoughts on Tom Ford Lost Cherie was I didn't like it enough to buy it. And, you know, for somebody who really likes cherry scents, I will shell out some money for a good cherry scent, but I wouldn't shell it out for Tom Ford Lost Cherie. On the other hand, this one, Lovely Cherie by Maison Alhambra, it's, I don't know that I would call it an exact clone of Lost Cherie, but it's pretty much right in there in the neighborhood. It does about the same thing. It has very similar notes. Once again, like the Bright Peach, it has less notes that are listed than the Tom Ford Lost Cherie, so Tom Ford might be more complex. But when I had sampled that one, I didn't notice all of those things. I mostly noticed the sort of the cherry, rose, and kind of a vanilla tonka bean sort of a smell to it. So the notes in common that this one has, Lovely Cherie with Lost Cherie, is bitter almond, black cherry, sour cherry, tonka bean, and Peru balsam. So the cherry definitely is there in common. The tonka bean gives it a kind of a sweet vanilla-y base to it. The Peru balsam, I don't honestly catch that as a really distinct note, but I guess it sort of smooths out some of the fruity stuff and sweet stuff. But for me, it's too sweet and kind of smells like cough syrup.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, I like it. I like it. It doesn't smell like a cough syrup, like you said, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own interpretations of things. So to you, it doesn't smell like cough syrup. To me,
I mean, it can, but it's not that strong of like a cough syrup scent, you know.
yeah. I guess the thing for me is I've smelled this on you, and I've smelled a few other people wearing this or Tom Ford Lost Cherry, and I appreciate it in little whiffs here and there. But when I put it on and I'm constantly inundated with it, I kind of go nose blind from it, but I don't really enjoy it while I'm still smelling it in full force.
Mm.
But on the other hand, this does last longer than Tom Ford's Lost Cherry. Yeah, you spray this on and it lasts a good maybe 3 to 4 hours projecting and 6 to 8 hours as a skin scent, maybe even a little bit more. But the cherry part of it goes away pretty quickly, which is kind of a common thing with cherry scents because cherry is an accord, it's not one scent. And depending on which things they use to make that up, parts of the cherry note start to die out pretty quickly after a couple hours, and you're left more with like an almond sort of a scent. And I think that's what happens with this and Lost Cherry. And so you basically get almonds.
Yeah.
Marzipan. Okay, move on to another fun Tom Ford clone. This one is Toscano Leather. And one guess what this one is a clone of.
Toscano Leather.
Tuscan Leather. Yeah, once again, you know, the bottle, the name, they're like dead on. They're not really trying to hide what they're copying here, which is actually why Maison Alhambra probably is an offshoot of the Lattafa brand because they probably knew they were going to end up in some legal trouble with it, which I guess Tom Ford has taken some legal action against these like dead ringer clones and stuff. So, you know, they maybe make a throwaway company or something that can just disappear overnight as an LLC. So, yeah, which is as evidenced by, you know, these are getting a little bit harder to find now. You can still find them, but they're not as easy as they were several months ago before I had heard that Tom Ford took legal action against them. So, once again, are the notes pretty much the same as Tuscan Leather? Yeah, pretty much. Basically, the only thing that really changes between the two is the Toscano Leather they note an animal notes or animalic notes, whereas Tuscan Leather has suede. So those kind of could be the same thing, and they're just sort of trying to one-off it by not exact copying the notes. But other than that, they're the same. There's saffron, thyme, leather, raspberry, woody notes, incense, jasmine, leather, and amber. So pretty much a dead ringer. Now this one I really like a lot. I would wear this one quite a bit. And I don't know as far as between the Tuscan Leather and this, which one lasts longer, because leather scents tend to just last a long time. It's something about the composition of them. They don't evaporate real quickly. But suffice it to say, this one lasts pretty much all day.
Yeah.
And while it's not a monster projector, it definitely does put out a good projection for quite a while. Probably varies on your body heat and you know, the kind of climate you're in, if it's warm or if it's cool. This one I think can really go year round. Really high heat might be a little bit trying for some people, but the profile of it I think works for just about year round. You liked this one quite a bit when you wore it, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was surprised that I like the animalic scents.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not animalic as in like barnyard poop or something
No.
like that. It's more of an animalic as in just something a little bit wild or leathery or something about it. Mm-hmm. Maybe something that reminds you of like being around animals and stuff, like horses and stuff, with like the horse tackle and the leather saddles and stuff. Not really like stinky animal stuff. But I guess they call it that because maybe it sounds better than saying suede notes. Okay, but yeah, definitely a really great copy there. Okay, and then last but not least, this one is a obvious copy of Ombre Leather. One of the things I thought was funny when I had watched some other reviewers talk about this one is how they think the bottle on this looks really cheap, which it does. But when you look at Tom Ford, the Ombre Leather, the bottle on that one looks pretty non-Tom Ford quality. It looks pretty boring and stuff. It's the same thing as this, basically. It's smaller, a little bit more well done, but basically the bottle, first of all, the bottle doesn't really matter that much. It's more or less to captivate you and give you sort of a feeling about the scent, but you know, the bottles are pretty much about the same. The name for Tom Ford, Ombre Leather, and this one, Amber and Leather. Yeah, once again, took a lot of creativity to come up with that name.
You almost think that they were just trying to make puns.
Yeah, and almost sort of like, yeah, it's a clone. Guess what it is. Don't have to think too hard. So this one, yeah, the notes in this one are very similar. This is the Amber and Leather has amber, jasmine, cardamom, leather, oak moss, and patchouli. About the only thing really different in this one from the Tom Ford is Tom Ford maybe comes off with a little bit more of a sort of a greenish tint at first to it with some violet leaf and cedar. But then other than that, it sort of draws together very similarly. They smell pretty close to the same after about the first 30 minutes where the top notes die down. The middle and the base, they dry down almost exactly the same, and it lasts for a long time. I haven't really tried it where I really timed how long I think it lasts, but a lot of people say that it projects for more than 4 hours and that it lasts pretty much all day. And I guess that depends on how heavily you spray it. This one is probably best for, say, like fall and winter. You could maybe wear it if you go lightly in the warmer spring and summer. I think it might be a little overpowering in summer, especially high humidity, high heat. But definitely a really nice cold winter or cold weather fragrance or cooler weather fragrance. Or if you're indoors and stuff in air conditioning, then wear it certainly. So that's the last of the ones that we're going to talk about today. Did you have any closing notes or thoughts on any of these? Which one was your favorite?
Well, Porto Neroli.
Yeah.
I like it a lot, in Ebony Fume. Yes.
Yeah.
And to let the audience know, we are actually going to do Tom Ford next.
Yep.
You know, so stay tuned.
Bye.
Bye.